Okay, so here's a patient, a real patient, 78-year-old, start of care June 16th, or June 17th of last year. COPD, 78 years old. Do you think they just established the COPD diagnosis? Okay, Medicare doesn't think so either. And they might have some bills to prove that they didn't. M1000, they came from a hospital. So we know that 4 days ago, Medicare thought this, wow, they admitted them to a hospital. That's something different than nothing happening. They have no caregiver in the home. And we'll take a look at the ADL scores. By the way, let me say that again. They have no caregiver. That's different than no caregiver in the home. Right? I don't live with my daughter anymore. My daughter went to college. She moved out, but I still got a daughter. And she goes to school in the same city I live in. So it's not like she lives there, but she's there. If I were, let's say that she doesn't move and I don't move. If I'm 90 and she's 68, that will be the exact same situation. It's not no caregiver. It's no caregiver that lives there. So keep that in mind. We'll take a look at the ADL scores. M1240, no severe pain. Is that what COPD patients are usually complaining to you about, is pain? No. So they go through it and they say, okay, makes sense so far. M1400, well, she's short of breath with moderate exertion. So if you go to the OASIS under M1400, short of breath with moderate exertion means she cannot walk 15 feet without being short of breath. 15 feet. That's from me to him. That's not very far. Okay, and why is that a concern? Because she lives alone. She better live in a pretty small place if she's okay with that. And then she's incontinent. The skin, not applicable. No skin issues. No pressure, stasis, or surgical wounds. Prior level of function, meds independent with assist, no injectable meds. Or current level of function, meds independent with assist, no injectable meds, and prior level of function, independent without assist, or with assist, which means that somebody probably helped her in setting up her pill box. Okay? Now we got to find out, would I expect the starter care nurse to find out who that was? Since there's no caregiver? Okay. Because that's something that we want to, and what are we doing when we talk about these med taking issues? We're making our case for nursing. Okay? So we're not going to have nursing in there unless we can make a case for it. These are the ADL scores. Remember the shorthand? Left column, top to bottom, dressing upper body, dressing lower body, bathing. Right column, top to bottom, toilet transfers, toilet hygiene, transfers, and ambulation. Now, pay attention to what I say when I talk about this, and please share this with anybody who ever talks about these ADL scores. Whenever I talk about these scores, I always talk about ambulation first. Always. Always, always, always. Because if I know the ambulation question, it answers 4 of the other ones for me. So our starting question, M1860, ambulation in the lower right-hand corner, she is a 2, which means safe with a roller walker. Everybody got that? All right. But before we get carried away on the fact that she's safe with a roller walker, safe with the roller walker for how far? 15 feet. Okay. Now, let's take that and go to dressing upper body. Dressing upper body is a 0, which means that if the cabinet is within 15 feet, she can walk to the cabinet, get her shirt out, and put it on. Possible. Okay. Now, for the sake of conversation, kind of an allusion as to where we're going this afternoon, just change this answer. Don't really write it in your book, but theoretically, change the answer of M1860 to a 3. That means she's only safe if somebody's walking with her, right? If that's the only score you change, can the rest of the scores be right? The auditors get that. So if that ambulation question was a 3 and everything else was and dressing up her body was a 0, denied. Doesn't matter what your therapist does. Not going to get paid. So your ADL scores got to make sense if you want to make sure you're not going to get denied. And who's filling those out? Your nurse. But let's think about this. Your nurse, you assigned the nurse came into your office this morning and said, oh, by the way, you got to start a care. You ruined her day already. Then she works it in, and she goes out there, and she goes through this oasis, and by the time she gets to the ADL section, she hates life, she hates her kids. She slams any numbers down and figures the PT will correct him when he comes in. And that's the point. In the future, that's going to betray you because you're already going to be paid for PT before he gets in. So how do you connect all those dots? This is what we're telling people to do. Go into the home, and to do a start of care, ask for the consent forms and sign the consent forms and do their Medicare cards. Then turn to the medication section of the Oasis and do the medication list. Because if you know the meds, you know what the patient's about. And then turn all the way ahead to M1810 to 1860 and answer those questions. Because you know how much easier the rest of the Oasis is if you know how the patient moves around? And remind yourself how important those are to get right. And do M1860 correct. And then make sure that you can handle those. So nurses understand this. I mean, please, let's eliminate, let's extinguish the concept that nurses can't answer these. Every MDS nurse and every skilled nurse, in every skilled nursing facility in America, there's a nurse who can answer these. Every nurse on an ortho floor, every nurse on a neuro floor, every nurse in an inpatient rehab unit can answer these questions. So it's just laughable that anybody says that we can't answer, that nurses can't answer these questions. So, okay, back to our real example. This is 2. It's a 0. Dressing lower body. She's a 2 there. What do you think that's about? If she was, let's just go down. If she was a 0, that would mean that she could walk to the dresser, get her pants or her skirt out, and then put them on. Okay? If she were a 1, that would mean that somebody needed to walk to the dresser, get her pants or her skirt out, hand it to her, and then she could put it on. Okay? Why is she a 2 in dressing lower body? Can't do it by herself, but why? What's our primary diagnosis? COPD. So when we're over there like that, somebody with moderate exertion starts to become hypoxic. Does that make sense? Okay, well, they're figuring that out as you say that too. But what if it was a 1? Does that make any sense? You can hand it to her, but she can't walk and get it like she can walk and get her shirt. So when you have nurses who don't understand these and they're trying to create a picture, they might put things that invalidate your entire clinical profile. She might think, well, it's harder for her for the lower, but I don't really understand. I'll make her lower than a 0. I'll make her a 1. That's what the auditors are feasting on, is those sort of inconsistencies. Bathing. She's a 4. Sponge bathed. Okay? We can't even comment about that now because there's nobody to sponge bathe her, but she's probably sponge bathing herself. One of the reasons that she's probably sponge bathing herself is because it's hot and steamy if she gets into the bathroom. Possibly one of the reasons. Upper right-hand column, 0, toilet transferring, toilet hygiene, both 0. She can get there and do it with devices. Fine. Number 1, she transfers to standing with a device in transfers. All makes sense. Prior level of function. So let's go through this list the way you need to go through it. Self-care, dressing and bathing, independent. Is she independent now? No. Ambulation, independent. Is she independent now? So she's independent with a walker, right? Let me translate that for you. Independent. Remember, if you're standing up and moving forward and not falling, we call it independent. Doesn't matter what's in your hands. Doesn't matter if it's a quad cane, crutches, a walker, or anything. So let me ask you this question. Prior level of function, independent. Is she independent now? Yes. All right. Transfers independent. She independent now? All right. Household tasks, which is cooking, dressing, or cooking and cleaning. We don't really know about that. Are you going to be able to do a lot in home care saying, I got to teach her how to cook again? You're just not.